Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel and to another episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm. My name's FPL Phillips and this is the series here on FPL YouTube where I take on the computer generated team or the AI computer team put together each week by the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm to see if a man can outscore a machine with my free hit draft of my own for each game week of the season. And so far, it's been a great start to the campaign for myself. I was 4-0 up heading into Game Week 5, but let's have a little bit of a quick recap before we get into Game Week 6 of how things went down in Game Week 5. And overall, it wasn't a great game week for many of us, I don't think, and the algorithm didn't fare too much better either, scoring above the average but only registering 50 points. There were a few no-shows in the defence as well, which meant that Kabore and that other Burnley defender, whose name I'm still not even going to pretend to be able to try and pronounce, came into the starting side. We also had some returns in midfield with Mohamed Salah scoring 10 points, Saka helping out with his 6, and then Awanai up front, Mr. Consistent so far this season, scoring another 5-point haul. Haaland captain as well, and Leno's clean sheets between the sticks meant that the algorithm finished on what is probably a pretty respectable 50 points, I would say. It scored way above my own personal team anyway. So I had to beat that 50 points total. My team that I put together and we showed last week failed to do that. So the algorithm did actually pull back its first win of the series. 4-1 the score now stands at. I wasn't too far behind, but it was 48. I went with Zinchenko in defence, which didn't end up paying off, but the likes of Saka in midfield, and basically going and opting for Chelsea and going for two assets in the form of Sterling and Jackson is really kind of what cost me this game week, as well as the Spurs boys in midfield also letting me down quite significantly. So yeah, kind of reflections of how things went in my actual team as well, with Jackson, Maddison, these kind of players not performing rather well. But we'll take it on the chin and we'll move into next game week. Reams 8 points down there, sat in my first sub position. I was hoping that maybe one of my defenders wouldn't feature instead of the algorithms having two of their players not make it to the starting side. So yeah, overall a bit of one to swallow, but I suppose 4-1, still a pretty comfortable lead over the computer. The algorithm's going to try and make it 4-2 this week. This is the team that is going to select to try and do so. And so we have a 3-5-2 formation once more and a higher predicted points total than that was reflected in the real scores last week. Let's see if it does actually live up to a decent points total this week. And in goal, we are going to see Flecken of Brentford. As Everton go travel to Brentford for that fixture in Game Week 6. 5.1 predicted points for him. I really still like him as a keeper option, to be honest. Brentford have had a few injury troubles, now have Rico Henry, who is out injured. We discussed him in yesterday's video in my own personal side. But I still think Brentford are a pretty formidable team, and Everton at home is a pretty nice fixture for any side to go for, really. So yeah, into the defence then. Is there going to be another Brentford asset? There is actually going to be. Pinnock is the one who comes in here. Definitely was my second or joint first, I suppose, favourite Brentford defender alongside Rico Henry before his injury, which does seem to be, sadly, quite a serious one. But I quite like that double up, and Everton haven't looked too great in terms of goals in front of goal this season. But alongside him is Akanji in the backline as well. Nottingham Forest at home, the Manchester City fixture for this game week. Now, we're not looking like we're going to get too many team leagues, but to be honest, if you're looking for a defender right now, it's probably in the boat of going for a different side than Manchester City. We've got Alvarez up front. We've got Erling Haaland up front. There are other options in midfield as well that you could maybe go for. If you want to go for a defender, then I suppose Akanji is not the least sensible of the picks at all. But I think that I'm going to sway away from going for an outfield Man City defender just with the rotation, with the Champions League starting and all that stuff. There is a lot of uncertainty and you can never be really sure that your player is going to get a start. But in a free hit team, it certainly doesn't look too shabby at all with Akanji in the team. If he does start, then that looks very good for prospects of a clean sheet for the citizens. And then finally, it is going to be Estupiñán coming in for Brighton's Bournemouth fixture at home. So a very nice fixture on paper for them. Estupiñán was rested, of course, last time out, but should come back into the side. It's 4.7 predicted points for him in Game Week 6. Moving into the midfield, we've got Mohamed Salah once again lining up in the algorithm team. The loyalty to him seems to be paying off for the algorithm so far this season, as him as a player alone, I should say. Not overall in the team. Some loyalty, some other players might have been a little bit misplaced, but Salah's been performing very well and very consistently. We're hoping that he can do so again as Liverpool take on West Ham. 7.0 is the predicted points for him this game week. We've then got a double up on 2 Brighton boys as well, so there's actually a triple up on Brighton players. The Bournemouth at home fixture is one that the computer seems to like, with Pascal Gross and Solly March being the 2 coming in. Now, I do actually quite like both these picks because Bournemouth seem to concede most of their chances down their left-hand flank, so going for Solly March kind of covers that right-hand side rather than going for someone like a Mitoma, who you could argue, of course, is a great option to go for as well. But 5.2 and 5.4 points for March and Gross are the predictions, respectively. And then finally, we've got Bruno Fernandes and Bukayo Saka. So the 2 penalty takers still making it in. Not too much else in terms of Bruno Fernandes to like at the moment in terms of his output. It's just the underlying numbers that still do look impressive for him. Manchester United coming off the back of that narrow defeat to Bayern Munich, a game I am actually yet to watch back, but did look like an exciting one on paper if you were able to tune into that one. We've then got Bukayo Saka in the derby against Tottenham Hotspur. That's always an entertaining one. Salah's data at home is good. I think that Saka is a very reasonable pick for this game week as well, despite it having a tougher fixture on paper. But Spurs, as we know, are going to be a little bit more attacking, will still ship goals in this Ange Postecoglou side. And then finally, up front, we've of course got Erling Haaland once again with the captain's armband, and this time Julian Alvarez does make it into the team. And I think that is rather a safe pick to go for him this game week. Maybe some of you even went early to try and catch what could be a potential price rise for Alvarez as I'm recording this on Wednesday evening. I think it looks pretty safe for minutes just with the number of injuries that there are kind of to the Manchester City side and the front line in particular. So Grealish being out, the likes of that, and Alvarez has had many minutes already this season. He's a young player. I don't think he's going to get fatigued like some people are maybe arguing. There's always that risk of Pep Roulette, but with injuries being, apparent in that Manchester City side, there's going to be a better chance of him getting a start at the weekend, and I think a pretty safe chance. I'd say probably around 85% chance maybe that Alvarez does start this game, maybe even such as 90%. I think it is, as far as I can tell anyway, which I'm no sort of in the know, that is what I put on it in terms of a number, and I think that's maybe even a big enough chance for me to take an early transfer and maybe move someone like a Jackson over to an Alvarez. But there is a chance we still get that leaked news on the day. Some sources are saying it's unlikely, but I still think that it's worth maybe going for Alvarez. If you're worried about funds, then that 0.1 million could make a difference down the line. Then you could go for it. But on the flip side, of course, this season, so far, money doesn't seem to be too much of an issue, so you can definitely afford to wait, and that's what the more conservative, and I suppose maybe you could argue sensible manager might be choosing to do at this time. And finally, on the bench, we have the following: Leno, Botman, Anderson, and then Archer. So a player who does actually feature in my team as well, and something that I was a little bit surprised missed out on the starting 11 altogether in the algorithm team, maybe based on the lack of clean sheets in a few of the earlier games of the season, was the Newcastle defence. And that's what I've chosen to take a little bit of a gamble on with my team. I've actually chosen to go with an all kind of Newcastle back line across the back, despite, in part from Estepinian, I should say. So I've gone with a double up on Botman, on Trippier as well. The slightly better underlying data so far this season, Fabian Schär does take some set pieces and stuff, could of course grab a goal out of anywhere, and it looks good for bonus points as well, but I just preferred Botman and Trippier slightly. I've stuck with Flecken in goal and Estepinian in defence, and in midfield I have also chosen to pick Pascal Gross as my Brighton preferred pick. His underlying data actually looks a little bit better than Solly March's and Mitoma's at the moment, so I really like him and he's a good player to watch. I think that he's kind of more of an eye test thing for me at the moment, going with Pascal Gross. And then finally, we've gone with Phil Foden, so I have gone with that Manchester City triple up on attack instead of going for a Kanji in defence. And I've gone with a little bit of a punt and a differential as well. Now, Leno has been playing heroically in goal for Fulham, but I think the Crystal Palace could have a decent day at home to that side. And I think that Edouard is the pick to go for from the Palace attack. They haven't been scoring too many goals, but Edouard has shown glimpses of promise. He scored a brace only a couple of weeks ago, so a repeat of that would be very nice and would help me maybe get the win over the algorithm this week. On the bench, we've got Areola, Cash, Kabore, and Sarr in case they're needed. But yeah, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of Eddie versus the algorithm. I want you guys, as always, to let me know down below in the comments, are you Team Algo or Team Eddie for this week? Which team do you think is going to come out on top? Have you been doing well with your predictions so far? Make sure to keep updated with that and tell us how you're doing down below in the comments. If you want to check out if there are any late changes to the algorithm side, then you can of course do so via the Fantasy Football Fix website. The links to all that is down below in the description. But I wish you all a happy rest of your day. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.